Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to this seventh part of Logos for Bible Hub users. Today's topic is, well, topics, or at least topical studies. So we'll take a look at how to access those in Bible Hub first, and then we'll look at a couple different methods for doing the same thing in Logos. So this video will be another short-ish one. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So starting from the Bible Hub homepage right here, once again, you just click the topical menu item right here. Now, once again, this is organized by verse. It will default to Genesis 1:1. Just whenever you're on the homepage, that's where it goes. So we're going to go to Deuteronomy. Chapter 32, verse 8. Okay, so here you can see we have the verse in English, a list of people that are tagged as relevant to this passage, right? Though I would personally question how Adam is contextually relevant, but whatever. The same goes for the list of places and topics. To the right, we have themes from the Dictionary of Bible Themes, right? Clicking any of these themes takes us to the full entry from said dictionary. So if we pick boundary, here we have boundary from the Dictionary of Bible Themes. It gives us a little bit of information, different types of boundaries and some references and so on. So we go back. Similarly to that, clicking on one of the people or places or topics takes us to a few dictionary entries on that person or place or topic. Be aware here, though, that these are results that are sometimes Anglo-centric. For that, I mean, by example, here, let's look for the word keeping, right? We open it up. And first and foremost, the top result that we get is Webster's Dictionary, which is cool if you want to understand the English word keeping. But this is going to give us English definitions. This is not going to be specific to the original languages, which isn't inherently bad, but beware not to take this as the top definition for a Hebrew or Greek word in question. Make sure you get those definitions and such from a lexicon. Once again, this is the BDB or Thayer's. Don't use Strong's definition as gospel. Okay? Just a heads up. Now, in my opinion, these are some of the most overlooked resources in Bible Hub, and I honestly wish more Bible Hub users would utilize these dictionaries. If we continue to scroll down, right, we'll get through a number of these, and we'll come to some library articles that relate to this passage that we're examining. Now, if we go back to Deuteronomy 32:8 in the Topical Study Guide and scroll down, we'll get to a number of brief library articles. The ones that relate specifically to parts of the verse that are part of the passage that we're examining. In our case, while McLaren's exposition here doesn't touch on verse 8, it does touch on verse 11, so it is closely related to what we're studying. Similar to what we saw in the Apocrypha and extra biblical section in the, I believe it was third video, so too these articles and excerpts are linked through the Bible Hub library page. Now, let's say that instead of starting with a specific verse, you just search for a given topic. To do that, just type your topic into the search bar. I'm going to use immersion or baptism as my example. Okay. Now, here we're taking to topical results. Now, that was because I came from the topical section of Bible Hub. If we started this here, just on the home page, and I searched baptism, it's going to give me a list of verses. So if you search and get a list of verses, but you want topical resources, just come click topical. Now we're back to where we were. So again, topical, baptism. So I'm going to select the top entry from the Topical Bible right here, which is just baptism, right? The Topical Bible will now show me verses about baptism. Scrolling down will take me to the dictionary entries. So Smith's Bible Dictionary, ATS Bible Dictionary, Easton's Bible Dictionary. From there, it's just a matter of reading the entry, right? So here you can just read about it. You'll see as we scroll down on the right side that there's also a list of subtopics. All right, so eventually we scroll down here and we get subtopics. So we could go beyond baptism to baptism of fire, baptism of the Holy Spirit, and so on. There's really not much else to say. Really what it is picking a topic and then getting either a list of passages that relate to it or going into a dictionary. That's kind of the extent of Bible Hub's topical studies. So with that, let's move on to Logos now. Here we are. There are two different ways to accomplish topical study. Well, that's not exactly true. There's actually more ways than that. We could do a search, right? We could search for a topic here. We could right-click a certain word in a Bible that we're reading, and then that could launch us down the trail of a topical study. But for our purposes here, we're going to check out topical studies with tools that were specifically designed for doing topical studies. So the first of those is the topic guide. So coming over here, topic guide. And once again, we're going to search for baptism. Now, because this was actually a recent topic I was reading more about, it's still in there. So we type in baptism and we go. Now, this is going to bring up a bunch of different dictionary links here. So the Baker Encyclopedia, the Lexham Theological Wordbook, the New Bible Dictionary, and so on. Anchor Yale is a higher prioritized one for me, so it's going to be kind of my top result. Any of these entries that I want to read more of, I can just click and it will open. So this will open to the Anchor Yale, this will open to the Baker, this will open to the Lexham Theological Wordbook, and so on and so forth. There's also a list of subtopics here. And I can click any of those to go through the Factbook, which we'll come back to in just a second. But here's kind of all the related topics and such. And especially I can open a new topic guide to infant baptism, right? Kind of a different related subtopic to study. Now, scrolling down, we see some related verses, right? Passages that relate to the topic at hand. Scrolling down a little bit further, we see sermons. We see, there's no results for places or people, because baptism isn't a person or a place, right? We wouldn't really expect that. We see some illustrations we can go to from encyclopedias of illustrations and so on. Some journal articles. These are all the different journal articles that I have in my library that have an entry or some sort of article in them that cover baptism. So again, these will only be populated by what's in your library. We have some interactives here. We have some media resources, so a picture of an ancient Israelite mikveh or baptismal pool. We have some media and graphics and such. We have the bookstore link here, which I can go to. These books I can add to cart and so on right now, or I can click and go an external link to the Logos website to read more about it. Down here at the bottom, we get to web links. These are sort of curated, I guess is kind of the way to put it, list of websites that Logos recommends that will link to scholarly sources. So there's one on a new look at baptism, a dissertation concerning the baptism of Jewish proselytes. That sounds like a really interesting one. So clicking that will open your browser. It'll open the article and take you straight there. So the topic guide is a good way to get introduced to topics, right? Obviously, and especially for those that have an older version of Logos, this was the way to do it. However, they introduced something in, I think it was Logos 5 or 6, between 2012 and 2014, called Factbook. Now, I didn't really care about Factbook initially until the 2020 update brought us Logos 9. The reason, because Factbook got a major upgrade and expansion with Logos 9. And this is now, in my opinion, the best way to study a given topic. So the Factbook, we mentioned it in our interface walkthrough, but it's this button right here. So Factbook. Now Factbook can be opened directly with this button on the top menu bar. And then just like we did before, we can search for baptism. All right. So here we have it. First and foremost, you'll get the primary entry from the Lexham Bible Dictionary. This is your sort of key article, right? Because Lexham, once again, is Faith Life's brand, right? It's their Bible dictionary, so they kind of prioritize that highly for you. However, I actually love the Lexham Bible Dictionary because it's so expansive. The material is up to date. I think it's really solid. Great place to start on topical studies. One of my professors, actually, he was my, I believe it was Greek 2 professor as part of my grad school. He himself has actually authored some of the entries for this resource. So that's kind of cool. Maybe I'm biased, but either way, I like it. So once again, the key article here is kind of the first starting point. Scrolling down just a little bit, further reading is first going to recommend the Lexham Theological Wordbook. Again, that makes sense. That's a Lexham product. Scrolling down a little more, we get to key passages, just like we had in the topic guide. And maybe at this point you're wondering, what even makes this different, right? Well, we'll get to that. So again, key passages, it relates to washing, it relates to baptism. Um, Scrolling down a little bit further, and you notice that we don't just have key passages that use the word baptize or baptism or baptized or something like that, right? Here we also get thematic suggestions. So these are passages that obviously they talk about some sort of baptism, they use the word baptism, but Genesis 7, 1 through 24, that's the flood and Noah's Ark. It doesn't use the word baptism there. There's not the verb baptize there. Why is this coming up? Right? Zechariah 13, talking about a fountain for cleansing the defilement and sin for the inhabitants of Jerusalem. It doesn't use the word baptize. Why does it come up? Well, because these are thematic suggestions, right? These are connections. Because the story of Noah's Ark, that relates the theme of coming through troubled waters, surrounded by death and being preserved in life. Zechariah 13, 1 through 6, speaks of a fountain being opened in the house of David for cleansing and defilement. It relates to the theme of baptism. So again, we scroll further down, and here we come to biblical senses, right? Remember our Bible sense lexicon, really, really awesome tool, in my opinion. To be baptized, to baptize, baptism as a rite, a baptizer, or one who performs that rite, and so on. We can click more, we can get more entries. Again, these are the different ways that the word or the word group is used as we encounter it in Scripture. So this is a great place to go to survey your library for a given topic, right? So again, we come down here to dictionaries, just like we had over here. Scroll a little bit further down, we get to cultural concepts. This will link to all kinds of resources. So here I have Bible references. And again, this is Bible references to the cultural concept of baptism. Here we have Nag Hammadi codices. Right? This could be the Gospel of Thomas. This could be another Gnostic work. This could be an early sectarian work or what have you. So these would be parallel passages, right? These would be passages in these Nag Hammadi resources that relate to the cultural concept of baptism. New Testament Apocrypha, right? The New Testament, the Acts of Philip, right? It has a passage in there about baptism. The Passion of Matthew has a passage about baptism. So all these sorts of things. Old Testament pseudepigrapha, so the Sibylline oracles, right? It has something in there about washing, about baptism. Again, this portion here is really good for digging into maybe not the theological background of baptism, but the cultural background of baptism. So that's really cool. Scrolling down a little bit further, we get to journals. Again, very similar to what we had over here, journal articles. This one's going to give me the individual journal as a whole list, and then I can expand that out if I want to see different articles from what volume it's in and so on. Sermons from my library that relate to it. Preaching resources, again, illustrations and these sorts of things. Books from my library. Now, I have more books than just these that touch on the topic of baptism. But the reason that these are brought up is because these are essentially books that are wholly about baptism. The whole book has been dedicated to it. So it's not just a topical entry. It's not just maybe a chapter on baptism. It's a lot more than that. Once again, we can come to the bookstore, and then we get an additional list of topics. Now, not only that, it gives us links. We could still open the topic guide to baptism. We could open a sermon starter guide, go ahead and start writing a sermon about baptism. We could work through some workflows. Again, there's videos on that. I'm not going to cover that. Or we could click other Factbook entries, baptism for the dead, right? Infant baptism, John's baptism, baptismal regeneration. These different concepts. There are other Factbook entries for all of these. So more than just topical entries, the Factbook actually collates thousands of resources and data sets and everything and brings them all together. That is the Factbook. Again, you have to have these things in your library, but it does a better job of organizing the information that you really want when you're studying something. Now, more so than just topical entries, the Factbook can also collate resources about other things. So if I drop down this little keyboard here and switch to Greek, then I can type I want baptizo, right? Let's go back to default. So baptizo, so now I'm in the fact book, but it's a Greek lemma entry, right? That's crazy. right? But there's an entry for this Greek verb. Now, if I click it, I can hear it pronounced. Here's how it's transliterated. Here's how it's spelled. Key articles this time from the Lexham Research Lexicon of the Greek New Testament. It's giving me lexical information about this word in its different usages, giving me different senses. Again, that's kind of what this little arrow here indicates, a different sense. It's going to give me references here to the Septuagint even. So Sirach 31, referring to washing after touching a corpse. Judith, these sorts of things. It's going to give me references where baptizo, again, this Greek word, is found in the Old Testament in Greek. So that's really awesome. Alternate corpus references, the Apostolic Fathers, Plato, Josephus, Justin Martyr, Old Testament, pseudepigrapha, again, referring to this Greek word in these other ancient sources. So scrolling down a little bit further, again, journal articles, that sort of thing, further reading, and then we come back to biblical senses, the different senses of this word. But specifically now we're talking about this Greek verb. I know there's a lot here. There's a lot it can do. The fact book, like I said, I didn't even care about it until the huge update, and now with this update, I love it. It is awesome, honestly. That's just some of the stuff that I wanted to highlight. I have to say, now I can scroll to the bottom and I can get to the Bible word study here, right? I can still open that back up. I have to say that the ability to do most of this in the fact book, even looking up, Greek lemmas, I'm almost embarrassed to admit, I didn't even know I could do this until I started preparing for this whole video series and working through some additional features that I wanted to highlight. Crazy, I know. Either way, that's it. Once again, thanks for checking this out. Links in the description, and shalom.